everybody. Alice Ginsberg again with another travelogue. You might recall that when I did the travelogue of my mini safari outside of Port Elizabeth in South Africa, that I promised you a travelogue from the Cape of Good Hope, from Cape Town to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So it was across the Atlantic. And the picture you are seeing right now is the Cape of Good Hope. This is where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Indian Ocean. And I am here to tell you that it was extremely windy at this vantage point. And you could see a difference in the color of the water between the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans. So now we're going to do a little bit in Cape Town, actually outside of Cape Town, and then we're going to cross the Atlantic and go to South America. So here is a map of Africa, and you can see that at the very tip, it's actually off the picture. I couldn't get the whole thing in, but we are at the very tip of Africa in this picture. And Port Elizabeth, outside of where the safari was, would have been in Africa, over to the right a little bit and up by, there's a little line here that which it denotes a river. That's where Shamwari Game Reserve is. Right now, again, we are at the very southern tip of Africa. And what our cruise did, it started in Cape Town, and we left and we went to Namibia, which is up here. And we did 2 stops in Namibia, which I'll show you. One was in Luderitz, which is a small town of about 12,500 people. And the other one is Walvis Bay, W-A-L-V like Victor, I-S like Sam, Walvis Bay. And Walvis Bay is where you go to access a town called Swakopmund. And Swakopmund is where Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie went when she was pregnant with their twins, and they wanted an upscale hospital with excellent medical care that would have been very private and away from the paparazzi. And they chose Swakopmund in Namibia. So here we are at a beach near the Cape of Good Hope, and these are the Boulder Penguins. Now, these are different from the penguins I showed you in Antarctica. They are marked differently, and they don't have as shaggy coats as the ones in Antarctica, and they really like to hang out on the sand. And this tells you that you're at the most southwestern point of the African continent, at the Cape of Good Hope. If you look at the waves beyond the sign, and you could see the tips of these waves breaking, and you could see the wisps of the water, it tells you a little bit of how windy it was there. And here, this is what the beach looks like. It's very rocky and pebbly. Welcome to Boulders, the home of the African penguin. This was part of Table Mountain National Park. And here we see the other side of the beach from what you saw before. And you can see it's a very nice bay. And I have some video, but it's really hard to capture. But you can see penguins going into the water, swimming around in this area here of the turquoise color water. They don't go out very far. And then they come back in and they hang out on the beach. We went to a botanical garden outside of Cape Town. And these are some of the flowers we saw. It was very hot and very dry when we were there. So I will say, I don't think the flowers were at their their peak. And this is a very large flower. As you can see, it's part of a cactus. It's called the King of the Finbows. F like Frank, Y, N like Nancy, B like Baker, O, S like Sam. King of the Finbows. This is the state flower of South Africa. And here, the Golden Pagoda, as you can see from the sign, and you see the flowers here all around. These are flowers you typically don't see in North America. We are now in the town of Lüderitz. As I said, this is in Namibia, about 12,500 people. The town dates back to 1883 and has a definite German heritage, as you can tell from these banners. It's a very German town. This is in the museum in Lüderitz. It was a coal center and a diamond center. And the train tracks in South Africa ended at Lüderitz, and I'll show you that in a minute. But as you can see, the German heritage is very evident here. And you can see from the sign, 120,000 carat Pro Manat marine diamond was unearthed here. It's one of the largest diamonds ever unearthed in Africa. They also showed us this skeleton of a flying dinosaur, which was unearthed in Namibia. So you see dinosaurs, diamonds, coal, and sand in Namibia. Here are some of the primitive weapons of the natives around Lüderitz. Some of the animals that they hunted. Check out these horns. This one at the right is particularly interesting. See all the ridges in it? It's very interesting. Whereas the one over to the left, hanging up here, has swirls in it, and this one to the right has notches in it. So it's pretty interesting. And this is what Lüderitz looked like in the early 1900s. This is the inside of a church in Lüderitz. The stained glass in Lüderitz was magnificent, but as you could see, the diamond insignia above the cross, and you could see the German eagle at the top. Modern home in present-day Lüderitz. This is a very lavish home, Lüderitz style. This is that same street I showed you in the pictures. This is that same street today in Lüderitz. And this is the street in Lüderitz. You can see how sandy it is. It's not blacktop or anything like that. It's straight sand. Here's another street in Lüderitz. We went into this home, this multi-story white home, which was quite grand. It was built by a gentleman who had recently married, and he wanted to keep his wife in Lüderitz. She was from Europe, and he wanted to please her, so he built this home. It did not work. She left him after a few years after it was finished. This is the upscale neighborhood in Lüderitz. And this is some of the soil going down to the beach. in Lüderitz. You can see it's very spongy, and it has some ossified wood here and the sand. This is what the soil looks like there. The inside of the church. Notice the crown here at the bottom. Namibia was a colony of Germany, of a German city-state before Germany was unified. And here's the rather ornate pulpit with the stained glass window in back of it, a fairly magnificent stained glass piece of art. Again, the German influence. And a very modern house in Lüderitz today. This was a very modern house. It is inhabited. We could not go in. And we loved this sign, the pizza, with all the different things, the daily specials. Have you accepted cheeses in your life? We thought that was pretty funny. Again, here's the train tracks I was describing to you coming into Lüderitz station. The train tracks date back to the early 1900s. And this is what Namibia looks like. Okay, this is the Namibian Desert. The black line you see here is a pipeline that was newly built in Namibia with Chinese money. There are a lot of new roads in Namibia. There's a lot of infrastructure that has been built very recently and pipelines that have been built very recently, and they have all been financed by the Chinese. Here you see part of a new road going in, and you see the infrastructure on the horizon, the elevated pipeline. Also, the new electrical lines. Is more of a pipeline. You can see it's elevated, and then it goes underground. It's elevated to go over the this other pipeline and over the train tracks. And as I mentioned, we are close to Swakopmund, and this is a major city in southern Namibia, very modern. You can see, barely make out between the palm trees. You can barely make out, but there was a whole line of streets and homes and a very modern hospital back in there. We are at Dune 7. It's the highest natural sand dune in the world. This is my husband standing there, and the dune goes straight up in back of him. And he's standing there to give you a little bit of scale. It is huge. And we had people in our group who tried to climb up. They got almost to the top, and then they realized somehow they were going to have to come down. And coming down was quite a project. My husband and I did not attempt to climb Dune 7. But in Walvis Bay, there was a marvelous museum, and it was full of geodes and quartz crystals, which had been mined in the vicinity. And this is the world's largest quartz crystal cluster that has ever been displayed. Here you see one of the beautiful geodes, the rock formations. And another one. Isn't that beautiful? And this is an up-close view of one of the geodes to give you an idea of the formation of the quartz. Here's another one. And yet another one. The rock formations were outstanding. And here's a rock formation. As you can see, it's got thousands of year old fossils embedded in it. These fossils date back to the Jurassic Age. Here's some more quartz. So gorgeous. The colors were absolutely vivid. I took this picture to give you an idea of what they try to sell to tourists. This is a typical display of African wares that you can purchase on the street. You could do this in Walvis Bay. You see it in Luderitz. You know, it's for the tourists. We have crossed the Atlantic Ocean. We were at sea on the ship for 9 straight days. We were supposed to stop at a small island called Tristan da Cunha, which is one of the most remote places on Earth, but it also has very treacherous currents around it when the wind is up, and our ship would not dock there because the currents were so strong. So we went straight across, and here we are in Montevideo at the federal building, like the Parliament of Uruguay, with the Uruguayan flag here, and the state flag of the state in which Montevideo is located. And this is the Uruguayan Parliament. So you can see it's a fairly bustling port, very busy port. It's the president's residence in Montevideo. You could barely make it out, but it says 1810 to 1868. So the parliament, the government actually sat here from 1810 to 1868, and now it's the president's house. Here we are in Constitution Plaza. This is again in Montevideo. I took this picture to give you a flavor of some of the shops and streets. You could see you're at the Louvre jewel shop. It's called the Louvre, selling jewels with a portrait of our favorite emperor, Napoleon. And they're very famous in Montevideo for the tango. I have video of this couple. They were really quite marvelous. And then they asked the tourists to join them. And this is my husband with the young lady, and she actually had him doing the tango, which pretty much astonished me. It was a lot of fun. Now, if you look closely here, this is the entrance to the port where our ship was docked in Montevideo. But notice there's an anchor here on display. And those of you who are familiar with World War II naval history will know of the ship Graf Spee. This is the anchor from the Graf Spee. And she was actually scuttled in this harbor. Montevideo has a vibrant Jewish community, and they have built their Holocaust memorial here at the edge of the sea. And it's a very quiet, very beautiful park that they keep extremely well maintained. Part of it has sayings. This one's from the Baal Shem Tov. In the recording is the redemption. And a saying from Maimonides. They created this memorial so that it shows a brokenness, to show how broken the world was and what a broken spirit had to have committed the Holocaust, plus what a broken phenomenon the Holocaust was for the Jewish people. And that's what this arrangement of walls is meant to represent. Here's an up-close version. And you can walk around among the walls. Some are on an incline, some not, but they're all at angles to show brokenness. You can see this is meant to be an entrance to, you walk along here, and this is the entrance going further along to more of that broken wall arrangement. And it's literally right on the seashore here. Then we visited a yeshiva in Montevideo. You could see, Baruchim Habaim, welcome to those who come. And this is the Yavne Yeshiva. It's also a synagogue. Here's their tree of life. Here's their sanctuary. Adirhu Yivne Beto Vikorov. You might recognize that from the Passover song, the Pesach song. Isn't that a wonderful sign? And this is a very vibrant place. You could see they have a whole music thing going on. There was a music festival being advertised with instruments from every generation. This yeshiva and synagogue were right next door to the Colegio Liceo, the school of San Juan Bautista. And they were brothers of the Sacred Family. So this was a very holy block because you had Jewish and Catholic schools and places of worship side by side. Synagogue in Montevideo. Tehillat David. We could not go in. Well, I take it back. There were two synagogues that we visited. This one we went into, the other one we did not. And this is their soccer stadium. Soccer is huge in South America. And of course, they call it football, F-U-T-B-O-L, football. And I took this picture so that you could see that this is a very interesting metal sculpture in the middle of a park. Now we are in Buenos Aires, and we are in La Recoleta. This is the famous cemetery with the very elaborate mausoleums. We have street upon street of mausoleums in La Recoleta. All manner of people are buried here if you can afford your mausoleum. There are Jewish symbols here as well as Catholic symbols. This is one of the mausoleums. And this is just one of the streets that it goes on for blocks. It's like city blocks full of streets like this. And these are all mausoleums, typically maintained by the family from generation to generation. And as you see, this was particularly interesting because you have a menorah and a cross. So you probably had two branches of a family and maybe some Marranos, and they wanted to preserve their heritage. A soldier's grave. This is the door to the mausoleum of the Duarte family. This is where Evita Perón is buried. She was a member of the Duarte family. That was her maiden name. And people leave fresh flowers here every day. Evita, eternal in the heart of the city and the people. This is the mausoleum of the Mitra family. You can see just how elaborate these are. So a Jewish doctor who is also an alumnus of the Colegio, the National College of Buenos Aires. And he lived a very long life. It looks like he was born in 1843 and he died in 1944. This is a political building. I believe this is the entrance to their Supreme Court. You see it says Justicia here. So it's a government building. We saw a lot of homeless people in Buenos Aires. This is not an unusual sight. We were surprised at how unkempt, may I say dirty, the streets were and how many homeless people we saw. Now we're in a very old part of Buenos Aires. It's, I think, the oldest part, and you see statues like this on the balconies of the old buildings. It's a shopping district now, mostly for tourists. I bought a hand-tooled leather purse in this district. A lot of stained glass and a lot of sculptures and a lot of leather goods for sale. This was a church that we went into in Buenos Aires. You can see how magnificent the stained glass is here. So I celebrated my 70th birthday in Buenos Aires on the ship, and they decorated my room, my stateroom. You could see the little animal made out of towels. My husband arranged for all these gorgeous, gorgeous flowers. This is the purse that I had bought in Buenos Aires, and the bed was draped in happy birthday. And here we are in a place called Santos. We're back in Uruguay. This is a meteorological station. You can see the longitude and the latitude and the altitude. The altitude, of course, is not very high. It's like less than 17 meters high. So it's about, let's see, it's about 35 feet high off of sea level. You can see it's maintained by the Friends of the Lighthouse of Punta del Este. I'm sorry, I said it was Santos. This is Punta del Este, Uruguay. And Punta del Este, Uruguay is right across the La Plata Delta, where the La Plata River empties into the Atlantic Ocean. It's right across the La Plata from Buenos Aires. And this is the meteorological station there. And the lighthouse. This is it's in operation and use today. This is the modern day lighthouse. Here's your classic view of Montevideo. It was not a very sunny day, unfortunately. And here we are in Punta del Este, and your very typical tourist street with all the street signs telling you how far you are away from various places, from Machu Picchu, you know, let's see, what else? From Shanghai, you get the idea. Bangkok, okay. And we're in Montevideo. This is Punta del Este, is 127 kilometers, not very far. So this was here, this was the skyline of Montevideo. And here we are in in Montevideo still, but not very far, less than, I would say, less than 60 miles from Punta del Este. But Punta del Este is also close, as I mentioned, to a city called Santos. Santos is in Brazil, and it's very famous. Why? It is the home of Pelé, the very famous super soccer player. And these are the banners of some of the awards that were earned in tournaments by the soccer team in Santos. They had walls and walls of cases of soccer trophies in this place. Here's your picture of Pelé. Here are his footprints. He is like the absolute superstar, Pepe, otherwise known as Pelé. His uniform. So you see Pepe and Pelé. And I mean, they were like the dream team in soccer. And this was their coveted trophy. It's the World Cup that they won. They won it several times. I thought this was a delightful picture. This is a father who has brought his son for the first time to the soccer museum in Santos. And of course, this is the field where they played. This is the sculpture outside of that stadium. Soccer is really huge. I would say it's as huge in South America as baseball and football combined, maybe even basketball, football, and baseball combined in the United States. It is the national sport. Very interesting building. This was the hub of world coffee trading back in the day, and it is located in Santos. This is the roof of the ceiling of the main hall in that building. And notice this. This is the trading floor. And what is this? You sat here as a merchant in the benches with a little table in front of you, and you would sample the coffee before you bought the coffee beans. As I said, this was a world hub. This was the world marketplace for trading in coffee. Very impressive tapestry that's hanging. It's framed and it's hanging in the coffee trading mercantile center. They are proclaiming, the Spaniards are proclaiming to the citizens concerning the city of Santos. your, uh, your favorite coffee grinding machine back in the day. All the different coffee beans. They are all different colors and different sizes and shapes. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different kinds of coffee here in the museum case. It's a fascinating building. This is what it looked like back in the day. This is the floor looking down. You could see this is the trading floor, and it's rimmed with these seats and tables for tasting the coffee and sampling the coffee beans. We thought it was interesting because of the 6-pointed star. Today in in the harbor at Punta del Este, you'll also see oil rigs coming in for refurbishment, and that's what this is. This may not need an introduction, but it is an unusual vista. We are going up the cable car in Rio de Janeiro, and this is one view of Rio seen from the cable car. Here's another view, and you could see all the different beaches. So you see one beach here, and one beach over here, and another one in the distance here. Rio has a series of crescent-shaped beaches along its coastline. And of course, this is a small boat harbor. Sugarloaf. This is the famous Sugarloaf Mountain. We went up to the top, and you can see there's a plane landing here. That's a plane coming into Rio. And this gives you a really good idea of the crescent-shaped beaches. Now, Rio is also known for the other mountain called Corcovado, which is the mountain on which the large concrete statue of, it's called Christ the Redeemer with the outstretched arms, overlooking the city of Rio. We did not go there on this trip. My husband and I had been in Rio back in 1981, and at that time we had gone up to Corcovado, but we had never been up to Sugarloaf, which is why we took this opportunity on this trip. Doesn't this look like a marvelous resort in this very smaller bay here? Beautiful blue water, white sand beach, and a lovely resort here nestled up against the cliff. Another view coming down on the cable car. Your classic view of Rio de Janeiro. This is Cabana Beach. This is Leblon Beach, and you can see people are having their lunch, enjoying some food and drink along the seaside. You see a lot of this in Rio. And here we are at the Great Synagogue in Rio. You could see the mosaic at the top, Mount Sinai and the 10 Commandments, and a very ornate entrance. Here we are on the inside. This is all needlework, all tapestry here. And as you can see, it's very beautiful. We have an image here of a Jerusalem wall. And here we have the image of the sky. And of course, the 10 Commandments and so forth. So we have the Israeli flag, and the green flag over here is the flag of Brazil. Gives you a little bit better view. This tapestry was absolutely fabulous. This is one of the tapestries to the side of the bima, and you can see it's meant to look like Old Jerusalem with Al-Aqsa Mosque here with the dome and the city, and this is supposed to be the Western Wall and the fields beyond. This would have depicted Jerusalem at the time. I think it's meant to depict the time of the early temple. And I thought we'd end with a very sweet ending. This is the oldest and most famous pastry shop in South America, and it is huge. You could see all the people and all the glass cases. You get an idea of some depth here of how large this pastry shop is. They have a bakery on the premises. This is some of what is in the cases. Doesn't that look scrumptious? It's Confeiteria Colombo. And this is their coat of arms. It's a family business. This is the family coat of arms. Now, I will tell you that the synagogue, the Great Synagogue we went to, that we saw, is an Orthodox synagogue. We did see a Reform synagogue. We passed it in our car with our guide, but she said that the inside was not so great. It was nothing special to look at. It's a round building, but I could tell you on the outside, it's nothing special to look at. On the hill, just above it, is a small park where there is a dedicated plot of land to Yitzhak Rabin. And there is a bust of him in this very shady clearing on the top of this hill. You could see Sugarloaf from this hill, and you could see the open sea from this hill, and then you could see part of the city from this hill. But I don't have any photographs because it was very shady, and none of the photographs that I took really came out. It's a small circular, a very small circular plaza with a bust of Yitzhak Rabin on a pedestal and a small single fountain of water. And that is the memorial to Yitzhak Rabin. Our guide told us that they hope to build something more elaborate there in the future, but right now nothing is going forward. So I will leave you with a picture of the inside of the Great Synagogue in Rio. And I hope you have enjoyed this travelogue and will be able to share it with your friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. For more videos, please visit www.cje.net/cyberclub.